Morgan, more human than human. Morgan stars Kate Mara, Anya Taylor-Joy, and is directed by Luke Scott, son of Ridley Scott. So in Morgan, you have this group of scientists and they want to make the perfect being, a perfect specimen. And Morgan is the third attempt at that. The first two attempts didn't work out that well. Morgan is sort of this perfect specimen, but she definitely has flaws. In the beginning of the movie, she attacks and impales one of the doctors, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh. And so she has this aggressive side to her that she has trouble controlling. So they bring in this risk management consultant, played by Kate Mara. Her name is Lee Weathers. And really she is just focused on, I guess, protecting the asset and keeping Morgan in check. But as we all know, if you watch the trailer, things don't go as well as planned, and Morgan becomes kind of a loose cannon in the third act. And guys, it feels like I just did a trailer reaction for this movie maybe a couple weeks ago, and it's already in theaters. And I was kind of unsure about it because it did remind me of Species, scientists playing with nature type movies, trying to create something, I guess, more human than human, trying to create the perfect specimen, and that's what they're trying to do with Morgan. And I was afraid that this was gonna venture into, I guess, charted territory, territory that we've seen over and over again, but I was pleasantly surprised by the second half of the movie. But first, you know what, let's change it up a bit. Let's talk about the cons first. I usually do the pros, but I think I'll do the cons because I really wanna focus on what I liked about this movie, actually. And also, before I get into this, I'm going to be talking some spoilers at the end of this, after the rating. So you can stay up until the rating, but after the rating, if you haven't seen the movie, I'd say get out of here. Because there's some really cool stuff about this movie that I want to talk about that I really can't talk in the spoiler-free section. Now, as far as the cons, the first, I'd say third of the movie, I almost lost hope. It did get rather tiresome. It got boring quite a bit. I think there were too many characters aside from Morgan that they were focusing on, and I think it just didn't work that well in the editing room. I didn't care as much for all the other characters aside from Morgan and Paul Giamatti's character, but we'll talk about him in the pros. Also, the character Morgan, I thought that we really only scratched the surface with that character in this movie. I thought they could have dug a little deeper, and maybe that's because I was comparing it to Species. Natasha Henstridge's character in that, they really dug deep in that character, so you were just completely invested in her by the end of the movie, and sometimes really invested. Okay, now we're going to talk about the pros, because once Paul Giamatti's character comes in, the psychiatrist, that's when this thing really kicks into high gear. Again, if you watch the trailer, you know that in that scene, things, I guess the best word for it is escalate, and boy do they escalate. And this is the turning point of the movie. This is where Morgan really takes hold of her more primal self, her more aggressive self. And in this point in the movie, you are gonna know that she is not to be messed with. She will kill just like that. Also, I really liked Kate Mara in this movie. She was the one character that I wasn't quite sure of throughout, and that's a good thing. I was always wanting to know more because she always gave a little bit more in every scene. So I was always curious, especially after things go haywire with Morgan in the middle of the movie. Then Kate Mara really kicks into high gear, I guess you could say. Guys, overall, I would say stick with this movie because, like I said, about halfway through, it really kicks into high gear. I highly recommend it. I'm going to give it a high humdrum because it does have some big problems. I think there's a better movie there. And if you take one word away from this, it's editing. I thought the editing really suffered in the first half of the movie. But I definitely want to talk about some spoilers because there's some really cool aspects of the second half of this movie. So we are entering the spoiler zone now. You have been warned. So the big thing I want to talk about is Kate Mara's character, Lee Weathers. There was a point in this movie where my wife looked at me and she said, I bet she is actually an experiment as well. And at that moment I was like, oh my God, that would be completely awesome. So it's hard for me to say if it was predictable or not because it wasn't to me, but it was to my wife. So some people might figure this out pretty early on, but to the movie's credit, It's not like this huge big reveal, you know, like as in Sixth Sense where everything just explodes in that scene. It's more of a gradual thing, and I think some people might pick it up at this point, and then some people might pick it up later in the movie. And like I said, I think that was an intentional thing. And I think Luke Scott didn't want the movie to ride on this twist. But I did love that. I thought that was a really cool aspect, something that had not been ventured in before in similar movies. And also the action was badass between Lee Weathers and Morgan. Really, the second half of this movie, there was quite a bit of action, quite a bit of hand-to-hand combat scenes actually. And I thought, especially Kate Mara, she handled herself quite well in these scenes. And I'm definitely curious to give this a second watch just to see if I pick up on the clues more. And in the end, I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did. So, what are your thoughts on Morgan? Looking forward to hearing them. Also, make sure you join the Killer Flicks Facebook group where we talk horror all day, every day. Like, comment, and subscribe to Drumdums. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And Drumdum out.